The moon, we see it every night, and it has already become something familiar to us. We can no longer imagine our lives without it. It causes tides, life cycles adjust to it, astrologers make money from it, and astronomers and cosmonauts make plans for it. But where did it come from and how? This question has fascinated people since the dawn of civilization. Hello, this is the age of skepticism and me. In this video, as is already our tradition, we'll start slowly, take our time, and maybe even be a bit boring, but by the second half of the video, we'll pick up the pace and make some truly mind-blowing discoveries. Many of you have missed the cosmic breakdowns, while some of you don't like them at all. However, I can't ignore this topic because outer space is an integral part of our universe and its history. And that's why, when analyzing a catastrophe that happened to our planet in the past, you can't skip a single piece of this complex puzzle. Half a year ago, I released my first video about Venus, and many people liked it, but not everyone understood why I did it. But actually, the purpose of that video was simple. Using the example of our planet's twin, I wanted to argue for the very possibility of a denser atmosphere existing on Earth. That's all. The next video about Venera described catastrophic events that happened there quite recently. And it talked about how perhaps our astronomers are being a bit dishonest and hiding the real situation there. There was also a video about the Luna, proving that it is impossible for there to be more than one Luna in our orbit. However, once again, not many realized that the video was specifically talking about the Lunas, not about satellites in general. Then comments started appearing, where people brought up the example of Mars with its 2 satellites or Jupiter with its 80. For those who didn't understand, compare the sizes of Luna and Phobos. I hope the questions will go away. A similar task is carried out by all the other videos as well. These are all pieces of one mosaic, one huge puzzle. And behind the scenes of all these videos, I hope a grim picture of the apocalypse that took place in our solar system, part of which was the tragedy on Earth, has already begun to emerge. So what does the moon have to do with it? More precisely, what mysteries does it present to us? Of course, one of the main mysteries is, in fact, the appearance of our satellite in orbit. But the main mystery lies not even in the very fact of its appearance. After all, anything can happen, and asteroids can quite possibly be captured by the gravity of another object. But its orbit is almost perfectly circular, and that's impossible without additional maneuvering. Any object captured by a planet as it passes by will inevitably have a highly elongated elliptical orbit. And that's true. This happens because the asteroid retains its original momentum. Yes, you can see this for yourself by looking at the trajectories of modern comets and asteroids in the near solar space. All of them are highly elongated, and this fact excites minds and gives rise to the boldest guesses and theories. Up to the point that the moon is considered a huge spacecraft on which cosmic invaders arrived on Earth. And the most interesting thing is that some scientists are already seriously starting to consider this version as a working hypothesis. The second big mystery of the moon is that it is supposedly hollow inside. The third mystery is that almost all of the so-called lunar seas are located only on the visible side, the side that is always turned toward us. But on the opposite dark side, there is a huge number of small craters, but almost no seas. And here, by the way, the fourth mystery comes up. And why is the moon always turned to us with only one side? The fifth mystery is the lunar mascons, gravitational anomalies hidden beneath the surface of the moon. but at the same time detected by instruments. Well, that's enough mysteries. Or should we add here the strange, unidentified flying objects, regularly detected flights of huge objects over the surface of the satellite? More precisely, we don't see the objects themselves, but their enormous shadows. Many have already found their answer in the extraterrestrial origin of the moon, believing that it is an artificial object. And really, if we attribute all this to the activities of unknown aliens, then yes, everything seems to make sense. But other questions arise. Well, for example, if there's such intense alien activity going on around us, then why haven't the aliens, made contact with us yet? Although the alien theory is good because you can use it to explain everything, at the same time it explains nothing. But that's exactly what bothers me. There are too many references to things that we supposedly can't explain. That's more like religion, not science. Well, look, instead of God and angels, we're supposed to attribute everything to powerful and invisible aliens, but essentially there's no difference. It's still the same religious dogma, with worship of an unknown and invisible, all-powerful being. It's no coincidence that lately the Catholic Church has started to acknowledge the existence of extraterrestrial life. The sectarians quickly realized that in essence, nothing would really change, but they would be on trend and their flock would remain calm. But such an explanation doesn't satisfy me. That's why right now, let's try to find out if it's possible to answer the questions I've just raised with some other version, one that doesn't necessarily involve aliens or any other divine forces. Let's start from the first point. One mysterious circular orbit of the moon. But what makes you think that the moon's orbit is perfectly circular? Remember, where did that come from? You probably won't be able to remember, or, if you're honest with yourself, you'll recall that the originator of this myth was one of those shows in the style of Röntgen, or other popular science sources and channels. And of course, you didn't check this fact, you just immediately believed it. And it's understandable, it's natural for a person to want to believe in miracles, but right away you were disappointed. The moon's orbit is not circular. That's not even hidden. To make sure of this, all you need to do is look at any astronomical reference book. The closest point of its orbit, perigee, ranges from 370 to 356,000 kilometers from the Earth, while the farthest point, apogee, varies between 404 and 407,000 kilometers. The deviation, the difference is more than 10%. That's a lot. You don't even need to be a great mathematician to understand that the moon's orbit is far from the perfect circle we're told it is. Yes, it's very close to a circle, but nevertheless, it's an ellipse. So why couldn't the super intelligent and all-powerful aliens manage to fully straighten out the trajectory? So, there is still a chance that the moon was captured as it passed by the Earth? However, it should be admitted that the moon's orbit is indeed too close to being circular for such a massive object. And really, the need for additional orbital corrections remains. We will return to this question later, but for now, let's move on to the second mystery. Hollow moon. The basis of this theory is the story that during the Apollo 11 mission, 2.5 tons were dropped onto the moon. A ton stage of the spacecraft and seismographs that had previously been placed on the surface of the satellite recorded powerful vibrations that lasted for more than an hour as a result of the stage's impact with the surface of the satellite. After that, the phrase "the moon rang like a bell" spread around the world, and immediately a conclusion was drawn about the moon being hollow. And no one even thought that the moon can't ring like a bell in the vacuum of space. The seismographs measured not the ringing of a bell, but the vibrations of the surface. And precisely because the surface turned out to be very dense and homogeneous, the signal persisted for quite a long time. Voids in the material, on the contrary, would have dampened the vibrations like a sponge. By the way, this is also the secret behind the so-called ringing stones on Earth. They are extremely dense, homogeneous, with no cavities inside, which is what causes the ringing. Some researchers enthusiastically broke such stones with metal hammers. I'm not able to understand this effect, and honestly, who really can? Even some stonemasons check the density of the masonry by its sound. If the mortar is uniform, the bricks seem to merge into a single monolith, and the masonry starts to ring a little. Nevertheless, the conclusion about the hollow moon was still made. Why? Because we know the mass of the moon and its density, about 3.5 grams per cubic centimeter, which corresponds to very solid basalt, but definitely not metal. And such a ringing sound could only occur if the density were, well, at least 45 grams per cubic centimeter. But how is that possible? From this, apparently, the conclusion was drawn that the density of the material at the surface is much higher than the internal density. And since the mass of the moon remains the same, it means that there are cavities inside it. And then the suitable metal was found, titanium, with its density of 4.5 grams. And then they immediately remembered the unusually shallow depth of the craters, and now the legend couldn't be stopped. It's necessary to make one more important clarification. The seismographs that recorded this effect were located on the visible side of the moon. Strangely enough, this plays a decisive role. We'll come back to this point a little later as well. Now let's move on to the third mystery, the lunar Maria and mascons. Let's pay attention to the fact that 80% of the lunar Maria are located on the visible side of the moon. And under each of them, there is a significant gravitational anomaly, a concentration of mass, which is abbreviated as a mascon. Back in 1968, the pioneers who discovered lunar mascons, Paul Muller and William Shigren, suggested that they consist of the remnants of cosmic bodies that became embedded in the moon during collisions. However, this hypothesis was immediately rejected. A reasonable, seemingly obvious hypothesis was dismissed. Do you know why? Because it's hard for scientists to imagine asteroids made of iron and nickel, it's difficult for them to picture it. Can you imagine the reasoning? Brilliant. More like an attempt to silence someone at any cost. And by the way, what did the scientists find easier to present? It turned out that it was easier for the scientists to explain this by assuming the existence of real lunar seas. Yes, from water and long geological processes that started the process of sedimentary rock formation. But which one of us is the alternative thinker after that? You don't even need bread. Just give you a chance to talk about sedimentary rock somewhere. And that's why, apparently, we can't do without simulation. Its time has come. In one of my previous videos, I showed you with the help of a simulator that there can't be 2 or 3 moons, or rather, objects the size and mass of the moon in Earth's orbit. All of them, except for one, will inevitably be thrown out of Earth's orbit as if by a catapult. It still serves us today as an excellent shield against foreign objects. But what if there was a time when the moon didn't exist? Then everything changes dramatically, and the Earth could get hit by a huge amount of debris as well as larger objects. I've already shown you the difference between the moon and Phobos, which is only about 20 kilometers in diameter. A tiny speck like that won't do for us. We'd need way too many of those specks, and it would take far too long to see any results. I suggest we take Karen Its diameter is nearly 1,200 kilometers. Just what we need, especially since there are quite a few such objects in the solar system. So let's arrange a rendezvous for them in Earth's orbit. Well, off the top of my head, there are about 13 of them. We'll give each of them their own unique elongated orbit, just randomly, so there's no doubt that they're really attracted by gravity and are natural objects, not artificial ones. Of course, we'll just randomly stretch out their orbits. If you have to, you can try it yourself. Maybe you'll do better or worse. It doesn't matter. What we need to find out is something else. Can their orbits, in principle, become circular without any adjustments by alien engines? All the orbits are initially in the same plane, again, purely to speed up the process. Those who wish can repeat the experiment in different planes. The result will be the same. You'll just have to wait a little longer. So, the beginning of the experiment is conventionally set at the year 1700. Let's conventionally set the interval to 100 years. Let's go. Already after 20 years of simulation, we see the first results. Our asteroids are actively influencing each other with their gravitational fields and even colliding. The first 4 corons collided with each other, as a result of which one of them ended up in a clearly circular orbit. Soon another Charon was ejected beyond Earth's orbit, but continued its path around the Sun along Earth's orbit. 30 years later, another Charon collided. "80 years after the start of the simulation, the remaining Charons settled into more stable orbits. Of them, 4 out of 7 orbits
became circular.
After 100 years from the start of the experiment, almost all the remaining Charons, except for one, took on circular orbits, and for one of the Charons, the difference between perigee and apogee was exactly 10%, just like the Moon. So, we have proven that it is indeed possible to achieve a circular orbit without the help of engines. But this is associated with active collisions. But what will happen when one Charon collides with another? This process is very complex, so we will launch a separate simulation for it. It shows us that the objects will absorb each other, and the size of the resulting object will increase. In other words, when such a number of asteroids collide in orbit, they will grow like a snowball, and eventually one of them will absorb the others or eject them out. I'm starting to suspect that this is exactly how the Moon appeared. It's like a snowball formed from a large number of other asteroids. So we've answered 2 questions, the circular orbit and mass cons. The next question is Lunar Maria. Why, only on one side? Take another look at the simulation result. A pair of the most stable objects with circular orbits formed on the outer edge, while the remaining asteroids are inside. The highest orbital speed is at perigee, which is closer to Earth, and the slowest apogee is closer to our future lunar bodies. Thus, there is a high probability that the Moon will capture an object and either give it gravitational acceleration and throw it out, or it will collide with itself and absorb it. Thus, the Moon will sort of suck in all the asteroids from the inner diameter, clearing the space near the Earth. And of course, the largest asteroids will hit the Moon specifically from the side facing the Earth. If an asteroid is 500 kilometers in diameter or larger, it won't create any craters. Instead, it will simply melt the rock, thus creating a lunar mare made of liquid magma. and beneath it is mascon, the former metallic core itself. And by the way, yes, magmatic rocks formed in this way typically have a density of 5 grams per cubic centimeter, which is even higher than that of titanium. There are a total of 5 such large areas of gravitational disturbances on the moon. Their dimensions allow us to judge the enormous size of the asteroids that crashed into them. This also explains why the moon always faces us with only one side, the side where the mass and density are higher. Remember, I said that the seismographs were placed only on the visible side of the moon? Well, they were set up on that very dense area, which is why they recorded vibration so well. According to this version, the moon is not hollow but porous, and the less dense, more porous areas are located precisely on the far side of the moon. By the way, there are mascons there too, and there are a lot of them, but all of them are tiny compared to those that are located under the visible side of the moon. Well, it seems like all the mysteries have been answered. The moon is not an artificial object, but a witness and direct participant in a catastrophe that occurred relatively recently in the solar system. And I'm already leaning toward the idea that it didn't come to us from anywhere else, but was formed right here in orbit. Oh, right, I forgot to mention the giant UFOs over the moon. Although, I think many have already guessed it anyway. The catastrophe isn't over yet. Some of its echoes are still alive to this day. That's why there's still a huge number of asteroids in Earth's orbit. We know about some of them, but others have very elongated orbits with an apogee far beyond the moon, which is why we simply can't see them. And the perigee of these fragments passes just a couple of kilometers above the surface of the moon on its visible side. So it's the shadow from the flight of these rocks that we see, like a giant unidentified flying object. According to the script. Have you ever been puzzled by the fact that on many Eastern flags, especially Muslim ones, there's a crescent and a star depicted on them? Moreover, lately they've started moving the star to the side, apparently suspecting something's not quite right. However, on earlier flags, the star is located right inside the crescent. There are even flags with 3 crescents, which, by the way, served as an additional argument in favor of the theory of 3 moons. So, such a situation can only occur in one case, when an observer from Earth sees the explosion from an asteroid crashing into the moon. Friends, none of us are immune to mistakes. And if you notice a flaw in my logic, then don't hesitate, clearly, correctly, and without stumbling, leave your angry comment under the video.
Subtitles.